Good morning and welcome to Climate Matters, your monthly sustainability radio show brought to you by the City of Santa Fe. I'm your host, Neal Denton, and we are on air every fourth Wednesday, 8:30 to 9, talking about climate change issues in and around Santa Fe. For the next half hour, we're going to be talking to a couple of folks from Yucca, Youth United for Climate Crisis Action, about an event that's happening this Friday at the Museum of Indian Arts and Culture up on Museum Hill. Our guests are Seneca Johnson and Jazmine Rodriguez Lopez. Seneca is a co-founder of Youth United for Climate Crisis Action, which shortens to Yucca, and Jazmine is on the steering committee. Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having us.
Good morning.
Thanks for joining me. So, for starters, why don't you tell us about Yucca?
Yeah, of course. So Yucca, as you mentioned, stands for Youth United for Climate Crisis Action. We're a project of Earth Care, which is a local community organization. And yeah, Yucca's mission is to support the creation of a sustainable and livable future, and also hold our elected officials accountable to responsible, but also bold climate action. And we are entirely led by young people, primarily youth of color, and we have members all across the state.
All right, I'm so glad you've organized around this matter of existential importance. What got you into this? Let's start with Seneca and then Jazmine.
Right, yeah. Yeah, I mean, for me, I think just like as an indigenous person, like growing up, I always had these values of like reciprocity, and really like just like mutual care and respect for Mother Earth and everything on Earth. Um, but I think in school when we were taught about like climate change and the climate crisis, it was all about like melting ice caps and polar bears, and if we recycle then everything's going to be okay. And so it was like it was, I think, really disheartening to see a lot of like the climate issues that we're facing, but I didn't really see any ways that like as a young person I could really do anything about it. And it wasn't until I got involved in community organizing and youth organizing around like 2016, I would think. It was like my freshman and sophomore year of high school. And that was when, these shootings were happening around like the Parkland shooting, and there was people organizing around like gun violence and gun control. And that kind of, first got me like, helped me realize like the power that young people can have, and like the power that like we as youth organizers can have. And so a couple years later, I got involved with Earth Care, and I went through their Apprentice Summer Leadership Academy, where we really, got fully grounded in, what does community organizing look like here in New Mexico, and got connected with, intergenerational organizers from across the state working on a variety of issues, including climate. And then, yeah, from there, me and a group of maybe like 10 other young people, all like high school and some college aged, all came together to form Yucca because it felt like, an issue that we cared a lot about, but was also very intersectional with everything else that we were facing. And, we're on a very short, what's the word? A very short clock, essentially, for how the amount of change that needs to happen in order to, prevent the worst of the climate crisis, the worst of the effects from hitting people. So it felt, really important to us to organize and also to, represent young people, because a lot of times we are left out of the climate movement, especially like young people of color. And so that's kind of, how I got involved in the work, and like why why it felt so important for us to come together as Yucca and to really like continue this, continue this movement. And I've, stuck with it ever since.
Awesome. Thank you so much for, taking action in response to that feeling of not really knowing what to do. What about you, Jazmine? What got you into this?
Yeah, well, actually, the first event that Yucca organized back in 2019, the first climate strike, I went with my school, so I was still kind of working on the outside, and I had never been to a protest before. I wasn't really familiar with social work or anything like that, but I started joining their meetings, and then that summer, in 2020, the summer of 2021, I did the same summer internship that Seneca did, and that's when I really started to learn what climate justice meant, and then I really started to learn about the circumstances that we live under. And I live by a water waste treatment facility, and I never knew that that's something that could impact me. I always thought like the smell and the air that came from that was just like normal and just happened because I lived there. And I never really thought about the systemic problems that would lead for people of color to live in that area because I live on the south side of Santa Fe. And so I really started to learn more about the circumstances that I live under and how intentional all of that is. And learning about all those things is kind of what gave me the drive to want to fight for change and learn about what were solutions to the problems that we were facing. And so I started to learn a lot from Seneca and other people who were already involved in Yucca, who had already been doing things here in the community for years. And I also kind of just stuck with it because it feels really special to be coming from a place where you're seeing all these impacts and you're seeing people who look like you and who are going through the same things as you leading the work. It just makes all the difference when you see yourself represented in that way. And I definitely want to be someone who shows that representation for younger generations. And it's just really special.
Wow, yeah, yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that. And we've mentioned Earth Care a couple times here in the show. I just want to take a minute and make sure the listeners know that's a community organization that's that's located and really focused their efforts on the south part of our town in environmental justice and like the training that you mentioned, community organizing. They do lots of great work. So if you're interested in checking Earth Care out, they've got a good website and they do a lot of work within the schools as well. Great people at Earth Care. We've worked with them over the years on a variety of things. Most recently, we're partnering on an environmental justice grant, at least what we've applied for, the City of Santa Fe and Earth Care, hoping to get that award and work on a health impact assessment to evaluate disproportionate impacts that the residents of Santa Fe feel from the history of disinvestment. But with that aside, let's talk about Friday. There's an event at the Museum of Indian Arts and Culture called Generations Aligned, Sharing Wisdom on Climate Action. Tell us about this event.
Yeah, so Yucca has partnered with Remy's Good Day Fund. Remy's Good Day Fund is an organization that has done a lot of work around like solarizing New Mexico, specifically solarizing a lot of our tribal communities here. And yeah, so we have decided to collaborate for this event on Friday. It's from 4:30 to 7 p.m., I believe. And yeah, so the entire idea is to really like bring together, these two generations, primarily Gen Z and more like Gen X and and boomers, in order to really strategize around the climate crisis, because this is an intergenerational movement, and I think as young people we're like it's important that we have our own space to organize, but also always remembering like whose shoulders we're standing on, who has been organizing before us, like what work has been done, and how can we really work together to carry the torch. And provide for all parts of our community. So we have 6 panelists. I'll be a moderator, and Jazmine is one of our youth panelists. And we're joined from people both inside and outside of the state to really talk about like what does climate justice look like? What is our vision for the future, and how can we align across generations to get there?
Yeah, it sounds like a great event. It's free, you don't have to pay to get in, and I understand that seating is limited. You're asking for RSVPs.
Yeah, I believe that we actually already met capacity, but people can still sign up and join the wait list. So that's definitely, if you're interested, it's something that you should do.
Yeah,
and then maybe great.
If there's interest, maybe we can host another event like this in the future, hopefully with maybe a live streaming capacity or like a hybrid situation or something like that. But this is just the first one, so we're testing things out.
Oh, great. Well, I'm glad to hear you're thinking about future events. How did this end up happening at the Museum of Indian Arts and Culture?
I think it was just kind of a combination of their very beautiful space. I don't for anyone who's ever been to the Mayak Museum. It's just like a very like, as I mentioned, very beautiful space. But their theater kind of provided like that nice mix between like, we wanted to have like, a large enough group of people that we can, really be like engaging across different communities and like engaging with each other, but also having like kind of that small enough feel that was still like very personal. Because the theater there only has like I think 100-person capacity or something like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think most of this like the logistically was organized by Remy's Good Day Fund. So a lot of this has been on their end. But yeah, I think it just provided like really nice space and way to partner with the museum.
And I wasn't familiar with Remy's Good Day Fund before I heard about this event. It looks like they're an organization that provides grants to programs on tribal lands in northern New Mexico. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah. I think they had previously been like a specific program under another organization, and only in the past like year and a half or so have they kind of come out under that umbrella as their own, as their kind of own organization. So they're still, I think that that might contribute to why people may not have heard of them before this. But yeah, so they've done a lot of work over the past, I think, like decade or so, solarizing our tribal communities, and they continue to give out micro grants.
Wow, that's great. I should connect with them, see if there are opportunities for collaboration.
Yeah, yeah.
So you said, you mentioned the term climate justice as it relates to the event. Just for the people listening and may not really understand the combination of those terms, what is climate and justice? Right? So, what does climate justice mean to you?
Yeah. Well, to me, climate justice has a lot to do with the fact that I think historically, when we address climate justice, some people think of it as something that affects everyone equally, or they see it just as plastic pollution and they don't see like racism and environmental justice and stuff like that. So I think climate obviously having to do with earth and justice having to do with equity. And I think when I think of equity, it has to do with how indigenous people, how poverty affects people disproportionately, and how climate has to do with that. And so I think, for example, water access in indigenous communities, I think is something that has a lot to do with climate justice, because it's something that has to do with both climate and people's rights, and just wanting to have that sovereignty for people. So when I think of climate justice, it has to do with a lot of different things, and it is definitely different for everyone. And it's also really intergenerational, which is really special for this panel that we're doing, because, problems change as time passes, and we're really working towards a future, a livable future for ourselves, what we want to create for generations that are coming after us too. It's not just us. And so I think climate justice has a lot to do with what we want to see for ourselves and how we can find those solutions and give power to the people to create that future that we want for ourselves.
Yeah, it's the people who've contributed the least to climate change are generally those who have to experience the effects the most, and don't really have capacity just to uproot and move to a place where it rains more and things like that, and the climate suits their clothes. So it's so important that we're leading with equity in this work to fight climate change. For people who are listening right now, maybe some young people who want to get involved with you all, how would they do that?
Yeah, so right for this summer, we're hosting like open member meetings. So basically, for any young person, we're kind of defining that as between the ages of like 14 and 25, who wants to organize with us, or at least see a little bit more of what we're about. We are hosting member meetings every Thursday at 4 p.m. They're from 4 to 5:30, and we are doing it hybrid this time. So you can look on our Instagram, which is yucca.nm, or our website, or which is yuccanm.org, to sign up and get the link over Zoom. And then there's also in person, both in Santa Fe and Albuquerque. In Santa Fe, it's at our Earth Care offices. And in Albuquerque, it is at a working classroom. And so, yeah, just again, if there's any like young people who want to see what we're about, they can attend these meetings. We're planning for future campaigns, just events that are happening this summer, all sorts of different stuff. And then during the year, we also have meetings as well.
That's very cool. And those Earth Care offices where you can go Thursdays at 4 are located just off of Jaguar at the Southside Library.
Yeah.
And you said you can attend online too.
Yes.
That's right.
And then sorry, I just pulled up the address. So for Santa Fe in person, it's 6600 Valentine Way, and for Albuquerque in person, it's 423 Atlantic Avenue Southwest.
All right, great. And people can just show up and say, I'm interested in doing something and about climate change. Here I am. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Do anything beforehand. That's great.
I think that's part of the special thing of having youth lead this. We acknowledge that people are coming from different levels of knowledge and stuff like that. So there's definitely no pressure to know anything or feel like you're gonna bring anything to the group. With community organizing, there's a lot of appreciation for people with different levels of knowledge. There's something for everybody. So I think even if you're just interested in learning more about climate justice and what we do as Yucca, I would definitely invite you to come join these meetings sometime.
All right, Thursdays at 4, and if you can't make it there in person, you can join online. Check out the Yucca website or the Instagram to get engaged. If you're just tuning in, this is Climate Matters, your monthly sustainability radio show brought to you by the City of Santa Fe. We're talking with Seneca Johnson and Jazmine Rodriguez Lopez with Yucca, which is Youth United for Climate Crisis Action, about an event happening this Friday, Generations Aligned, Sharing Wisdom on Climate Action. It's at the Museum of Indian Arts. Unfortunately, it's already reached capacity. Very popular event. Let's learn some more about what's going on. You said there are going to be 3 grandparents there. Tell me about the grandparents that are going to be speaking.
Yeah. So there are, as you mentioned, there's 3. One is Paula Jamturco. She actually wrote a book with her granddaughter, who at the time was in 6th grade, about women in environmental justice movements and women leaders. And so they interview people from, I think, like 10 different countries to really talk about like what climate justice meant to them and how they were approaching their work. And that offers like, I think, a really unique insight into, I guess, the kind of point of this panel of like this intersection between, like the experience of our elders, but also like the energy and insight of, our younger community members as well. So she's coming in from California. There's also Larry Rasmussen, who is a professor of ethics and theology. He also wrote a book called Letters to My Grandchildren, When Uncertainty is a Sure Thing. And so he, again, like brings that really, I think, a really crucial perspective of like branching into climate justice and also like our connection to the earth and our spiritual communities. And our third elder, Kathy Sanchez, who is one of the founders of Table Women United, also, I think, brings that perspective. She talks about colonization and decolonization and, what that looks like in environmental justice work, and also like what that looks like with our connections to, to each other, to Mother Earth, to our, spirituality and our all of that different stuff. And so those are our 3 grandparents that are on the panel. And I think they'll bring like, really unique perspectives across the board, and also will be really interesting to be able to connect with them in that way.
Sounds like a really special event. Sad to hear it's sold out because I'm not on the RSVP list. I did want to mention, you said earlier there's a wait list, and you can, I think you sign up for that by going on the website where you, the Eventbrite website where you get tickets. Is that right? So you get on the wait list. All right. And you can find that through the Yucca website or social media. I saw a post on their Facebook that brought me to the Eventbrite website. So check that out. So there's not going to be any live stream of the event where people can tune in?
I think, unfortunately, not this time. I think that kind of occurred to us a little bit late in the process.
Oh, it's okay. It's hard organizing these events. Yeah, I just, it's great hearing that, people as young as 14 years old can engage in yucca. My daughter, she's 10, and she's in Global Warming Express. She started in fourth grade, actually. I'm the sustainability officer here at the city of Santa Fe, but she started this on her own, signed up for it, and told me about it. And then she started expressing more interest in what I do for work. She's like, Dad, why didn't you tell me about all this stuff? I saw her speak this last year at the Roundhouse, encouraging an electric vehicle tax credit. That was pretty cool. And yeah, maybe when she's 4 years older, she can get engaged in yucca. And it fills me with hope to see young people engaged, people as young as 10 and even younger in that Global Warming Express program that's sponsored by the Sierra Club and Santa Fe Public Schools, where they get young people engaged. And then there's also a climate innovation challenge that happens within Santa Fe Public Schools, where this organization called CABU, Climate Action Voces Unidas, is organizing young people and doing this work. Like I do here at the city of Santa Fe, day in and day out. It can sometimes get pretty hard to have hopes, even when you are making a big impact, just because the challenge is so huge and daunting. So I'm just saying it fills me with joy and hope to see people organizing around climate crisis action, because it is a crisis. And as you mentioned, we have a ticking clock. If those icy parts of the world keep melting at the rate they're melting, basically the earth underneath it is going to emit more emissions to the point where we won't, even anything that humans can do, we won't be able to reverse things like more frequent, more intense wildfires, more intense drought, and of course the effect that has on all of our lives with water scarcity. So I guess that's just what I'm trying to say is thank you for organizing and giving an opportunity for young people to get engaged, because like you were saying early on in your experience, it was like, well, recycle more and that'll solve the problem, but it's much more complicated than that, and so many people wonder, what can I do?
Yeah, no, I think that issue that you touched on of like just having to try and tackle these like such huge structures and huge issues is really disheartening. And I think burnout is something that we do have to deal with a lot and figure out like how we can consistently, keep our hope alive and consistently, keep doing this work because it can be really difficult. But I think that's also part of what makes our work, I think, really, really special here, because, obviously, like it's youth organizing, but also I think as New Mexicans, we have a really important role in the climate crisis. And New Mexico is, I think, the third third largest producer of oil and gas in the entire nation. Um, and for all that, we have continued to be called like climate leaders or like entrepreneurs in like the climate world or whatever as the state of New Mexico. We've also consistently only extracted more and more, and we've only gotten you know more land leased or more barrels of oil collected and extracted. And so I think we do have like a really big role, I think, like nationwide as New Mexico, um, and a really big responsibility both like like statewide, nationally, and internationally, because the Permian Basin that we do share with Texas is I believe like the largest oil basin in the world, and would account for about 10% of the remaining global carbon budget, in order to prevent crossing 1.5 degrees of warming, which is kind of like a benchmark for the number that we want to avoid. So I
Yeah.
think being here in New Mexico, we have we're in a really unique position where we're very reliant on oil and gas. And coming back to the idea of climate justice, like we have to do this really carefully in order to prevent historically burdened, already overburdened communities from being further hurt. But we have this, larger responsibility to, try and change these systems and try and create change in the time frame that we do have, because of the unique location that we're at and because of the opportunities that we have to, change things and actually, be climate innovators.
Yes, you're right. And I know Yucca's done a lot of work at the state legislature. We got a few minutes left in the show. Do you want to talk about some of that work that happened at the legislature this last session, or just in general?
Yeah, so yeah, you're totally right. A lot of the work that we do is at the legislative level. Every legislative session, we try to rally young people, especially teach them about policy, teach them about the impact that we can do when we try to support things. Um, so this past legislative session, we had a few actions. I know for me, we mobilized some kids from my school, and so we brought them to the roundhouse, and we showed them what it's like to be in that space, and they were able to hear what it was like to see policymakers discuss wanting to pass something or not wanting to pass a law, certain things like that, and just introduce them to that level of organizing where you can deal with laws and stuff like that. And so part of what Yucca does is educate ourselves and work together collectively, from like the structure of a steering committee to our members to our allies and stuff like that, and figure out where it is that we can go into what spaces as young people and show them, that we're here, that we're present, and that we're absolutely gonna fight for a change for ourselves, and we want to be at the front lines of this decision making, and that it's our right, and that we want a future, and that we're gonna fight for it. So I think that perspective on its own is really powerful, and it's something that really drives our work.
Yeah, and I'll also just mention very briefly, like, we also pair this at like our advocacy work and our policy work with several other strategies. As Yasmin mentioned, we do actions, so we've done like protest and creative actions, and like blockades, all kinds of different things. But something we also did very recently was we joined together with several other organizational and individual plaintiffs across New Mexico to actually sue our state legislature and the state of New Mexico for their failure to regulate oil and gas. And we did this because of there's so many loopholes, there's so many different things that like they just really haven't regulated oil and gas in a way that like it has endangered people's rights to a healthy life, to a healthy environment, a clean and healthy environment, as we are entitled to in our New Mexico Constitution. So that's something we did just this last May, and it's also kind of tying in with our legislative work, and also our work trying to change these structures that we are operating under. So yeah, we do kind of have multi-pronged approaches.
Wow. Yeah, that's really significant, the lawsuit. I'm really curious to see what the next steps are from the who's is it Yucca or Earth Care? Who's organizing it? Both of you?
Well, it's Yucca, like Seneca mentioned, in collaboration with other plaintiffs. So that includes individuals and other organizations that also focus on climate justice, social work. And so what it is it's just different. It's a lot of different perspectives, but coming towards a common goal. So working part of that, working collectivity and with other people, because it's really not just us, and it's never just one organization. So this is just an example of how we can work collaboratively with other organizations for a common goal and really build power through like in numbers and in a common goal.
Yeah, and then on the actual plaintiffs, it also like we like and because Yucca is a C3 and C4 organization. So while we are a program of Earth Care, we also have our own separate things as well. So both Yucca and Earth Care are named as plaintiffs.
I see. Okay. Yeah. Well, very interesting. You're doing a lot there to motivate change. And I've been outside the roundhouse that event where my daughter spoke. I mentioned I think it was called Climate Justice Day. And you all were there with your banner. And I see your stuff on social media. I'm really glad for your efforts to hold our leaders accountable to move at the pace that we need to move, to really react to the climate crisis for what it is, a crisis, an emergency. So we're approaching the end of the show here, and I just want to say thank you both, Seneca and Jazmine, so much for joining me. As a reminder, check out the Yucca website to get involved if you're ages 14 to 25. If you're not, still check it out to, attend events, learn more, become educated. and ultimately get involved in this effort we're all working on to make the world a better place. Thank you
Yeah.
both so much for joining me.
Thank you so much
Yeah.
for having us.
Thank you.
All right, hope you have a great day. This has been Climate Matters, your sustainability radio show brought to you by the City of Santa Fe. We are on air every fourth Wednesday, 8:30 to 9, talking about climate issues in and around Santa Fe. We'll see you in July.